Okay, so the next module talks about Rational's approach, and this answers the question that gets asked every time we go in to see a new prospect and we tell them, software development's hard, but we can help you. And the first question they always ask is, well, why should we believe you? The last 10 bozos that came in here told me the exact same thing. That they had the answer, and they didn't help us much. Why should we believe that you're any different? Okay? And, there's a lot of skepticism about this, especially since the 80s. Do any of you remember the big case tool, thing of the 80s? All software is going to you just use our tool and your software is going to almost write itself. Remember that? And what happened to all of those products and companies? The products became shelfware and the companies went out of business. Okay? There's not very many of them that are left. And what that left, by the way, was a residue, a justifiable residue of skepticism about automation of software development. So this is our answer to the question, why is Rational different? What is there about the Rational approach which should lead the customer to believe that he should invest in us as opposed to anybody else? Well, the first thing is that we don't characterize ourselves as a tools company. Okay? I don't know how many times I can say it. Tools in and of themselves generally don't help much on any project of any complexity. We believe that to ensure customer success, there's really three things that you have to have. You have to have some sort of process, some sort of framework to bring some discipline to the effort. And you need to have tools that automate and enforce that process. So one way to look at this is that the process and the tools have to mutually reinforce each other. Okay? The tools by themselves don't help, okay, absent the process. The process needs tool support for automation and for enforcement. But there's something else you need, and that has to do with customer context, and that is the process and the tools are fairly general. But every customer's situation is somewhat different. Okay? They've got a different domain that they're programming for. They have a different organizational structure. They have a different social structure. I guarantee you if you have a programming team in Alabama, all other things being equal, there's going to be something different about that team than a programming team in Winnipeg. Okay? Just having to do with the temperature. Okay? And, obviously a myriad of other social effects. So it turns out that what you really need is to work on the skills side, on the technology insertion side, because most organizations by themselves don't have what it takes to adopt new technology and tools. And so what Rational believes is that you really need three things. You need process in the form of best practices. You need tools. Okay? And then you also need a services arm or a services business to accelerate the implementation of the process and the tools in the specific customer context that you find. So one way to think about the services business is it's the way you adapt the process and the tools to the specifics of the customer situation. Okay? Now this is a very, very important slide. We call this slide the keystone slide. And if I ever have, just 5 minutes with a customer and I know I'm going to get to show them just one slide, this is the slide that I show them. Because this slide captures what is unique about Rational, what our differentiation is. We are the only company that provides all three. There are lots of tools companies that will ship you a shrink wrap box and they're done. There's lots of universities, study groups, standards organizations, think tanks that will crank out white papers on process forever and ever and ever. And a lot of them are what I call paper tigers. Okay? It's just paper. And then there's companies who do consulting, there's companies who do outsourcing, there's companies who do contract programming. But they're doing something different than we do. They're basically doing the job for the customer. What our services organization does is teach the customer how to fish. In other words, we don't catch the fish for the customer, but we teach the customer through process and tools how to do a better job of fishing. Okay? There's no other company today of our size that does all three. Okay? So that's our value proposition. Okay? Process, tools, and services. Now, where's our market? Well, you can characterize the software development market two ways. One is by size, the number of developers. Okay? The other one is by the importance of software development to the organization. Okay? And most of our business has been in this upper right-hand corner, where they both have a large number of developers and software development capability is very important to them. That's why we have a major account channel, a direct sales force, large deals, very highly differentiated. We get very close to the customer. Customers trying to make a state change in terms of how they develop their software. It's very high touch. Okay? We get very intimate with our customers. Now, we also have a business down here, which is mostly telesales, and this is the customer who calls up and says, I'd like 10 copies of Rose. And we send them 10 copies of Rose, and we don't do too much more. And there's a reason why we don't want to neglect this part of the marketplace. There's two reasons. One, a lot of the companies that are down there are someday going to be up there, right? They're going to grow, they're going to migrate. And what you want to do is get them used to using your tools and process when they're small. Because we believe our tools and process are industrial strength, so they'll scale as companies get bigger. So you want to kind of get them early and grow them as customers. The other reason you want to do business down here is because people in our industry are pretty mobile. So a lot of you, for example, came from smaller companies where you may have used our tools, and what's the first thing you're going to do when you come to your new company, right? You're going to say, hey, I used this tool at my old company and it really helped. And now all of a sudden, you know, somebody who bought 2 licenses at his old company now triggers a 100 license sale at his new company. So that's another reason you want to work down here. People sometimes ask me about these other quadrants. Who's in these other quadrants? You know, for example, how could you have a large number of developers but have software development capability not be very important? That seems like a contradiction. But you could, for example, have a company that outsources all of its software development. Now, implicitly, they have a lot of developers working on their software, okay? But they're basically somebody else's developers. So software development capability is not very important to them. Up here, you have a lot of the small teams that work in embedded software. So those are small numbers of developers, but software development capability is very important to them. Okay? The problem for us is that because those teams are so small, economically it's difficult for us to go after them. So that's the other quadrant. Now, one of the things that we're going to talk a lot about today is how this view of the market influences both our product strategy and our field strategy. And one of the things that this model implies is that we build long-term relationships with our customers. Okay? And that over time, we move up this pyramid where we start out with a customer where we've sold them maybe 1 or 2 products. You know, we're participating in the account. Over time, we want the customer to actually prefer our products over other companies' products. So we want to become the preferred choice. Maybe become a division standard or a company standard. And then ultimately, for some class of customers, move to the top of the pyramid where we actually have a partnership. Okay? And we have that with companies like Ericsson, where our relationship has developed to the point where they have a lot of influence on our product direction. Okay? We work very intimately with Ericsson. Moving up this pyramid has a very, very concrete effect on our business. And it has to do with customer loyalty and repeat business. Why is repeat business a good thing regardless of whatever business you're in? Right. You know, the more repeat business you have, the lower your average cost of sales. The most expensive sale you ever make is the first sale you make to a customer. You have to do a lot of work to educate the customer, persuade the customer to get that first purchase order. That first purchase order is terribly expensive. When you get repeat business from that customer, it costs you a lot less in terms of sales and marketing expense. And the third sale and the fourth sale and the fifth sale, becomes even cheaper. So the more repeat business you have, the lower your average cost of sales and the higher your margins are. So long-term customer loyalty and repeat business is a very good thing. The other thing to remember is that the companies we're doing business with are not going to go away. If we do business with an Ericsson or General Motors or a company like that, the company is going to be in business for a long time. And guess what? They're going to be developing software forever. It's not like in 5 years Ericsson's going to stop developing software, right? So there's an opportunity, if you can build a strong relationship with that customer, to basically have an annuity, okay, to build in a constant revenue stream from that customer. And in the end, wind up with a fairly low cost of sales.